Under the dazzling stage lights, the atmosphere in the Tesla auditorium was filled with a sense of formality and expectation. Elon Musk, the visionary behind world-changing inventions, appeared with his calm demeanor, beginning the special recruitment event. He spoke about the strict standards, degrees, expertise, experience, all of which were gateways to the technological dream. The audience below, mostly engineers and outstanding students, dressed sharply, listened attentively. Everything seemed to be following the usual course, until a young black man, dressed simply and holding an old notebook, stood up. The entire hall fell silent in an instant. At that very moment, as the silence hung in the air like a thin veil, the young man stepped toward the microphone. The sound of his old dark shoes, still dusty with red earth, clattered against the modern floor, a jarring contrast. He stood firm, wearing a slightly wrinkled shirt, faded by time and sunlight. He held his frayed notebook tightly in his hands. No high-tech gadgets, no suit, no presentation slides, just a gaze that was direct and unassuming, neither arrogant nor self-conscious. Only sincerity, so genuine that it almost made the crowd uneasy. "My name is Nathaniel," he said, his voice deep and warm, slightly hoarse as though accustomed to foggy mornings and sun-drenched afternoons. "I come from a small town, far away, where there are no technical universities, no labs, and no one talks to me about AI or robots. But I'm here because I believe I have something to offer." A quiet murmur rippled through the crowd. A few people glanced at each other, exchanging looks. An applicant with no degree, no business card, daring to show up here at a gathering of the brightest minds in technology? "No degree at all," a voice rang out from the right side of the room, not loud but clear enough for everyone to hear. Nathaniel didn't turn. He stood there, calm as though used to such skeptical glances. "No," he replied, "but I built a robot that can plant, care for, and protect forests. From old parts I found at the junkyard near my house." This time the murmurs were no longer scattered, but spread rapidly like wind sweeping through a forest. The look shifted from curiosity to doubt, tinged with a hint of mockery. A young engineer in a gray suit, sitting in the front row, raised an eyebrow, half smiling, half confused. Some people shook their heads. Others laughed aloud. There was only one person who didn't show any emotion: Elon Musk. He didn't pull out his phone, didn't exchange words with anyone, simply watched Nathaniel intently with a thoughtful expression. His cold, sharp eyes seemed to pierce through the layers of thought of the young man standing before him. Elon picked up the microphone. "You say you created a robot to protect forests?" Nathaniel nodded. "Yes. It can identify areas that are on fire, send out alerts, and automatically plant seeds in barren lands. I used old sensors, broken phone cameras, tin can shells, and discarded electronics." The air in the auditorium seemed to hang in suspense, wavering between doubt and curiosity. Elon didn't laugh or dismiss the idea. He simply asked, "Then prove it. If it truly works, you'll have a place at Tesla." No lengthy speeches, no HR consultants or application forms. Just a promise, spoken like a challenge, but enough to change the life of one person. Nathaniel lowered his head slightly, as if ready to face whatever came next. The stage lights cast their glow on his face, where tiny beads of sweat shimmered, whether from the pressure or the lights, no one could tell. But in his eyes there was nothing but determination. He turned and walked away, leaving the auditorium in a prolonged silence. But this time no one dared laugh. For in the final moments, in the way he walked, upright, slow, yet resolute, there was something very real, very different. Something that couldn't easily be defined, but could be felt by the deepest of instincts: belief. Belief that didn't come from degrees or status, but from someone willing to stand up amidst all the doubt, with nothing but a notebook and a dream nurtured from discarded fragments. And from that moment on, the name Nathaniel, a stranger amidst a world of fame, began to ripple with a quiet yet powerful wave. After that recruitment event, as the stage lights dimmed and the animated conversations resumed, no one remembered Nathaniel, the young man who carried an unfamiliar dream and a robot no one had ever seen. But in a distant place, hundreds of miles away from the crowded city, in an old garage nestled beside a field of wild grass, the light flickered on once more. Nathaniel returned to where it all began. No grandeur, no fanfare, only long days and calloused hands. That garage, once the family storage space, had now become his makeshift workspace. The ceiling sagged, the wooden planks were rotting, and oil stains marred the floor. There, among boxes of broken parts, broken hard drives, and charred wires, Nathaniel embarked on a journey that no one believed could succeed. He had no lab. His workbench was just an old piece of wood, half of it peeling, the other half eaten away by termites. The wind blew through the cracks in the broken window, extinguishing the oil lamp during late-night hours. When the rainy season came, water leaked from the ceiling, dripping directly onto the circuits, once causing the entire system he was building to explode with a dry crack. But Nathaniel didn't give up. By day, he worked odd jobs in the fields to earn money for copper wire and screws. At night, he powered on his old laptop with only 30 minutes of battery life, diving into technical forums, fumbling through difficult English articles, learning snippets of code and circuit diagrams. Sometimes when he figured out a new operation, he cheered like a child who had just assembled a toy. In the early days, the robot was nothing more than a clunky mass of metal, flickering with a red light. The motors overheated after a few minutes, the sensors misread the area, and the control system was sluggish. Villagers walking by would laugh, calling it a pile of metal that knows how to shake. Kids dreaming in broad daylight, someone once said. His robot isn't even as good as my old lawnmower. There was only one person who didn't laugh. Mr. David was an old retired engineer who lived alone on the outskirts of town, where the trees grew thick and his old truck hadn't started in years. He met Nathaniel by chance at the junkyard, both of them fighting over a piece of a circuit board still glowing with light. "What are you going to do with that?" he asked. Nathaniel told him everything, about the meeting with Elon Musk, the challenge, and the dream of replanting forests with an autonomous machine. Mr. David didn't respond immediately, but the next day he brought a toolbox and placed it in the middle of Nathaniel's garage, simply saying one thing: you need to learn how to measure resistance before you can build a world-saving robot. From then on, they became quiet companions. By day, Nathaniel still worked odd jobs. By evening, Mr. David taught him how to read circuits, check currents, and understand the logic behind each technical decision. They sat under the flickering yellow light, surrounded by cluttered blueprints, arguing late into the night until dawn. The robot began to improve. The steel frame was replaced with a lighter alloy thanks to old washing machine parts. The infrared sensor was upgraded with a lens taken from a broken camera. The seed planting function was fine-tuned to match the soil moisture levels, using an energy-efficient module that David pointed out. Little by little, the robot no longer flickered. It moved steadily across rough terrain, recognizing saplings with a basic machine learning algorithm Nathaniel had learned from an anonymous forum. Most importantly, it could detect the scent of smoke and send out an alert at the first sign of smoldering fire. One evening, as the machine completed its first full cycle without malfunctioning, Nathaniel sank to the ground, his hands oily and his eyes wet. Mr. Harris simply stood there nodding. No words were needed. They both understood. What they had just completed wasn't merely a machine, but a belief that had been passed down between two generations. between two people once left behind by society. Still, there was one final step to return to where it all began, to face Elon Musk and the Tesla board, this time with proof in hand. On the way back to the city, Nathaniel held the robot tightly in a wooden crate he'd made himself, along with the old notebook filled with hundreds of lines of code, hand-drawn schematics, and hasty technical notes. His heart raced, not because he feared failure, but because he knew. The moment ahead wouldn't just prove the robot worked, but it would show that those who were never chosen from the start could still rewrite their own stories. And in that place, where the lights were about to turn on again, that dream was ready to be revealed, not with words, but through action. That morning, the Tesla Center was packed. Exceptional candidates from around the world arrived, holding their sleek presentations, walking alongside colleagues in perfectly tailored suits, their eyes gleaming with the confidence of those accustomed to walking in the glow of success. Meanwhile, Nathaniel, after a long night on a cross-country bus, appeared quietly, standing at the entrance of the auditorium with a worn wooden crate wrapped in canvas, tied with twine. No one noticed him. The world here still operated by clear standards, prestigious degrees, academic accomplishments, and a vast network of connections. These criteria had never included him. But this time, Nathaniel was not there to ask for a place. He was there to prove that sometimes a dream big enough can break through barriers that seem impenetrable. On stage, the candidates took turns presenting their projects. Intricate designs, cutting-edge AI technologies, impressive graphs showing performance metrics in simulation models. The judges nodded, made notes, occasionally whispering to each other. The audience clapped politely as part of the familiar ritual. Then it was Nathaniel's turn. No applause, no PowerPoint slides, just a young man wearing a simple canvas jacket, stepping up with humility, pushing a worn-out cart carrying the wooden crate. He didn't offer long-winded greetings or boast of his credentials or achievements. He simply untied the rope, opened the crate, and said softly, "I call it Root Guardian, the guardian of life." For a moment, the entire auditorium seemed to freeze. Nathaniel powered up the device. The robot, smaller than expected with a simple design, emitted a soft hum, then began to move. It navigated using light and moisture sensors, stopping when it detected a dry patch of soil, then gently planting a pre-treated seed into the earth. The movement was delicate and precise. No one spoke, but eyes began to follow more intently. The robot continued, scanning the surrounding area, locating a young sapling, adjusting the spacing for planting the seeds. Suddenly it stopped. A red symbol appeared on its display, a warning. Nathaniel explained, "It just detected an unusual heat signature in the western simulation zone, a potential wildfire risk." The auditorium erupted in surprised murmurs. Some senior engineers in the front row began to take notes more urgently. Elon Musk, seated in the back row, crossed his arms, his gaze focused and intent. Everything seemed to be going perfectly. But then, as if fate had set a final test, the robot froze. A beep sounded. The joints locked up. The screen flickered erratically, then went dark. The room fell silent. The audience began to murmur. One judge checked his watch, another sighed. There were a few shakes of the head. On stage, Nathaniel stood still, but only for a moment. He moved toward the machine, gently removed the outer casing, and his hands moved precisely over every screw, every wire. Not a hint of panic. Sweat dripped down his forehead, mingling with the dust on the robot's body. Each motion showed that he had fixed it hundreds of times before, in stormy nights, in a garage full of mosquitoes and lacking electricity. Elon Musk unexpectedly stood up. He walked toward the microphone and asked calmly, "Do you know what just happened?" Nathaniel, without looking up, replied, "The left motor overclocked. I increased the seed planting speed, but I hadn't accounted for the delay in the arm's descent mechanism. Elon said nothing. He simply uttered three words: "Fix it." And so, in front of hundreds under the cold lights and scrutinizing gazes, Nathaniel did the unexpected. He repaired it right there. With a spare copper wire, a backup circuit, and a little software tweak from an old control interface, he revived it. Root Guardian lit up again. It stood up, spun around in a small circle, as if thanking him, and then resumed its task. This time, smoother, more precise. It even added a new action, releasing a fine mist to moisturize the seed just planted. At that moment, applause rang out. Not polite applause. Real applause. Powerful, long-lasting. Those who had once mocked now stood up. The judges who had been writing notes mechanically now put their pens down. And Elon Musk, who had said little until now, walked up on stage and stood next to Nathaniel. No microphone. No need for loudspeakers. In a low voice, he said, "It's not the product that caught my attention. It's how you responded when it broke." Then he turned to the panel and simply said, "We need someone like him." And in that moment, surrounded by hundreds of eyes, Nathaniel was no longer an unknown. He had become the embodiment of something that had slowly vanished from the formulas for success: resilience in adversity, and an unwavering belief when everything else was against him. He didn't bow his head in thanks. He just stood there, his hand gripping the old notebook in his jacket pocket, as if he knew that a new chapter of his journey had just officially begun. The entire auditorium fell into silence after that declaration. It wasn't the silence of doubt, like when Nathaniel first stepped onto the stage. It was a quiet, emotional stillness, as if everyone understood they had just witnessed something rare and genuine in a world that often values appearance over substance. Elon Musk didn't use flowery words, nor did he try to create a viral moment. He simply stood there, his gaze focused forward, then turned slightly toward the young man standing beside him. "This is the kind of person I need," he said, his voice not loud but clear, like a command that determined the future. Someone who doesn't falter in the face of failure, who doesn't wait for someone to lead the way before taking the first step. In that moment, under the cold blue lights, Nathaniel stood still, his eyes glistening but without shedding a tear. Perhaps in his mind, hundreds of images flashed like a fast-forward film, hands cracked from disassembling parts, long nights spent scouring junkyards for components, the condescending looks of others, and the warm voice of Mr. Harris when he first called him a true engineer. Elon didn't ask for any additional documentation. No resume, no letters of recommendation. He simply made one straightforward offer. "Tomorrow come to my R&D office. Bring your designs if you have them. If not, just bring yourself." The applause rang out again, this time echoing from the back of the auditorium to the front rows. But the loudest applause came from those who had once mocked him, who had shaken their heads, whispered doubts when Nathaniel first took that step. Their change in attitude wasn't due to magic, but to an undeniable reality. Perseverance, when proven by action, will cause even the most fortified walls to bow. The ceremony ended, but for Nathaniel, a door had truly been opened. In the private meeting room afterward, Elon Musk's investment commitment. Elon Musk declared to his senior associates, "I will fully fund the Root Guardian project, not just to make it a product, but to make it a global solution." He demanded the creation of a dedicated engineering team, led by Nathaniel, now no longer a guest, but an official member of the pioneering team. This decision was met with surprise. A few senior advisors voiced their concerns. Isn't it risky to entrust such power to someone who's never had formal training? Elon simply smiled and replied, "The world already has too many people trained to follow. I need someone who dares to think differently." In his first week at headquarters, Nathaniel didn't arrive in a sleek Tesla or sit in an office with glass walls. He kept his old habits, wearing a fabric backpack, carrying his weathered notebook, and sitting in the workshop with the technical team like a craftsman among other craftsmen. Root Guardian was upgraded day by day, adding features like soil analysis, automatic irrigation based on biological cycles, and algorithms for detecting wildfire risks using satellite data. But more than the product, it was the spirit behind it that earned the respect of the whole team. They didn't just learn from him how to fix a circuit. They learned from him persistence, a belief in a future built by hand, without waiting for anyone's approval. News about Nathaniel spread quickly. Major newspapers ran headlines. The boy from the junkyard gets hired by Tesla, from a barren garden to the world's creative hub, but he avoided the media. They don't need to know my name, he once said. They just need to know that Root Guardian can save the trees. As from Mr. Harris, he quietly sent a text. Proud of you, little guy. The world needs more Nathans. In response, Nathaniel sent a video. The robot, now complete, planting seeds on a barren hillside, which was now gradually turning green again. Finally, in an all-company meeting, Elon mentioned him once more. We often talk about technological breakthroughs, but I want to talk about a breakthrough in thinking. Nathaniel's living proof that if you're determined enough about a dream, you can change the very structure of a system. In that moment, people saw that Nathaniel wasn't on the stage. He was out in the test garden, adjusting the robot's wheels, just like the first day, as if there had never been any difference between the past and the present. And when night fell, the light from the small room behind the lab still shone. Nathaniel continued writing in his old notebook, no longer with clumsy formulas, but with long-term plans for the next generation of Root Guardian. No certificates, no honors, just an unwavering spirit. Because for him, Tesla was not the destination. It was simply the next step in a journey that had never stopped. And so, when Nathaniel left the auditorium that day, the evening sun gently cast over his faded jacket. The old notebook in his hand seemed to glow amidst the hurried pace of life. No one looked at him as an exception anymore, but as a living testament to what once seemed impossible. From the scribbled notes in a journal to the roaring applause of the entire auditorium, he had written the journey of a person who didn't wait for a miracle, but created one. That image, simple yet proud, inspired millions to dare to dream, dare to act, and dare to walk even when the path had yet to appear beneath their feet.